Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Everything Went Black podcast. The year is winding down. We only got a couple more episodes left before we go on winter break. Terence Hanum returns. You'll know Terence from the band Locrian, as well as other projects he's working on. This time around, we're talking about his brand new science fiction book, New Faith. And we have a great conversation. And you guys have a lot to look forward to with this one. If you're listening to this show, you definitely should be listening to the other podcasts of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse. Kicking everything off every other Monday, we've got Brandon Legion's Horror Wolf 666. Up next on Tuesday, we have Jackie Smith's Into the Necrosphere. Wednesday brings us Everything Went Black and Iblis Manifestations. Thursday is Necro Thursday, where we bring you the Necromaniacs Horror Podcast, as well as Day 1 of Soul Knox. Friday, Spitball Media comes at you. Saturday is a day off, but on Sunday, Carl Hikara returns with Day 2 of Soul Knox. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. I appreciate all the kind words and messages I've been getting from everyone. If you want to support the show further, in addition to sharing and liking us on social media, you can join the Everything Went Black Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you get bonus content. For $5 a month, you get all the bonus content, plus early access to the episodes. And for $25 a month, you can become a sponsor. Terence, welcome back, and happy holidays. We're in the midst of the holiday season right now.
Yes,
and Everything Went Black is closing out 2025, and this is going to be one of the last couple of episodes of the year. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Are you enjoying the holidays?
Yeah, got my kids, and we had a great little Thanksgiving with my family and stuff. So yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a nice time. I have teenagers, so we're kind of like enjoying it before they're not wanting to be with us anymore. So yes, we're enjoying it. Yeah.
I always ask this question to like friends, because I don't have kids. It's unlikely I'll ever have kids, but friends of mine that are creative and doing art and music and writing and all these things. Are your kids also interested in stuff like that?
Yes. I don't know if they would like. I think that they're interested. Like, music's really important to them,
right?
And my daughter goes to like an arts high school for visual art, and like she's a really good painter. She's a really good digital artist, and my son is really creative, like with sewing and like 3D stuff. But I think they're also like much more realistic because of my wife and myself both being musicians and artists and writers. It's like they kind of see that it's like because I'll be like, why aren't you guys starting bands? Like, I was your age, I had a band, and they're just kind of like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so I definitely, they're always asking questions, and I'm just like, they'll figure it out. Like when they get interested, like, it's like, I think that they're just like, it's so much work, and like for them, their world is maybe a little bit shaded by social media, where it's like you either are like nobody or you're like a celebrity, like a TikTok celebrity or something. You know what I mean? I think it's kind of like, and I think that it's like, yeah, like, I don't know. And I think that, when I was, 12, forming my first punk band, like there was no social media, like
the good old days, man.
Yeah, but there's also like, how many bands kind of suffered in obscurity, or I'm not that it was brilliant. It wasn't brilliant, like, but it was like, you weren't so self-conscious that like every single thing you did was going to be a thing. And I think now it's kind of like, if I make the wrong note or wrong performance, I'm going to be shamed on social media or whatever. And I think that I can see, not that that's behind my kids, but I think that it's like I can see that kind of like apprehension of like, if I make a statement, what if it's the wrong expression, you know?
I mean, that's a huge irony because social media was supposed to be a way for people to connect and, get their ideas out there. And the fact that it's such this it's like, Herculean force behind suppressing people and giving and sort of taking that courage away to actually
Yeah.
express yourself, and it's just like, and I'm going to take the counterpoint to that. You're saying how many bands like languished in obscurity before social media, how many bands that completely are garbage and making horrible music are massive because of social media.
Yeah, yeah, sure. No, I mean, I think, but and alongside that is like, I was with some friends last night, and that label Numero, right? They said they did all those emo bands reissues, right, from the '90s that had like 2 7 inches out,
Yeah.
and it's like it's interesting in some regards, but also I'll be like, that band was terrible.
Yep. Yeah.
I'll be like, someone, but it's also like people care about that, like, for me, actually, they got one band that really got me, and that was Don Martin 3. They're from Gainesville. They're really weird emo band, and I really liked their records.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm not familiar with them actually.
no, and no one should be.
Yeah.
They made like 107 inches that were like hand stamped, and but they were just like pretty weird and free for. You can listen to it now, like,
Yeah.
but Numero did a reissue of that LP, and I was like, that's pretty cool. That's a band that was really strange. I think like they weren't like an immediate thing, and there weren't like it wasn't like Frail, where that was a band that inspired a lot of other bands, which I apologize to any Frail fans. I still think it's unlistenable garbage. Like, I don't think they're very good at. I really didn't think they were very good then, but I still don't think they're very good. But I get that people like they inspired so many other groups. But so then, I don't know. It's like this weird thing where like now there's this band that's like, you didn't know them, and you were in that scene, in that world of underground hardcore and emo and that crossover of punk and all that stuff in that '90s period. So it's interesting to me, like that, like these bands can kind of like plucked out of obscurity, and like I don't know, reconsidered. But it's also like, I kind of would
Well,
hate for that to happen to my bands that was in the '90s. It's like,
yeah,
ooh,
man.
I
I
don't
mean,
know if I want that to happen.
the thing is too, it's like, a lot of people kind of like reflect back on time and they're like, oh, this band should have been much, it should have been huge or whatever. Like there's always
Yeah,
that conversation or like, but some of these bands are as big as they should have been. It's like
yeah,
that's I think like some of these bands that we're talking about that are really obscure and they have like a couple 7 inches out. You're only supposed to see them in like a co-op basement. You're not
yeah,
supposed to see them playing on a big sound system somewhere.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
kind of the deal. It's like, I love Dead Guy, but it was weird seeing them play on a big stage when they started reforming.
yeah. I have such mixed emotions about it. Like, I love Dead Guys, one of formative band for me. That
Yeah,
was
totally
really important
inspirational.
when I got Fixation on the Coworker. I was like, I love this,
Hmm.
and it made me go back and find Rorschach.
Oh yeah,
It made me like, I remember then kind of like, oh, like what else is like this? And someone was like, I should check out Rorschach, because I think there was a member that joined later from Rorschach or something. There was like a,
yeah, yeah. Keith Hawkins was in
yeah,
Dead Guy and Rorschach. Yeah,
yeah.
the primary.
And then I was like, Rorschach's amazing, and that got me into like a lot of that um New Jersey weird hardcore
Oh
stuff,
yeah, some of my
and
favorite stuff.
yeah, yeah, no, and that Gern Blandstern, like all the stuff on Gern
Yeah,
Blandstern, I was like, got that catalog, and I was like, all right, I'm checking out Merrill and Native Nod, or what, like it was like, which also recent they had a reissue. Native Nod got a reissue from Numero, which is well deserved,
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, man. It's funny to me. So I think for my kids, I don't know. Back to that, it's like, you know, it's a strange time where I think they're very like, and them and their friends, like they're very creative and they're always doing stuff. But I think they're all not, not all of them, but I think there's like this big kind of question mark of do I share it or not? And that's interesting to me. I don't know. That's interesting to
It,
me.
it is interesting, and it kind of ties into some of the concepts in your book too, actually, that we're going to discuss later. Where
Sure.
it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's like, there's supposed to be this empowering platform that is supposed to allow people, and I'm talking about just even going all the way back to like MySpace, which is primarily for
Yeah.
for bands. It was supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it just that idea, that freedom gets usurped by this kind of feeling of self-consciousness that arise
Yeah.
from so many eyes on something that you're going to do, or this expectation that you're supposed to be doing these things, or you're
Yeah.
supposed to have so many followers and all that sort of stuff. Where when the world was smaller, you just made stuff because you kind of knew only like, like 20 or
Yeah.
30 people were going to check it out.
Yeah.
It's like a real irony that I think that a lot is lost with a lot of people sometimes.
No, I agree. I think it's like, you know, there's just a glut of stuff, and
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
I mean, that's like the other thing. It's like, to me, I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, put the stuff out there. Like,
Hmm.
there's so much stuff out there. There's nothing you can do that's wrong, I mean, like, don't hurt anybody's feelings or be a jerk or you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like, I think, it's like, you know, yeah, yeah. I'm always encouraging, and my sons are going to skateboarding. I'm just like, he found it was interesting. We were in North Carolina, and there's a skate shop there, and they kind of like, saw my son. They're like, yeah, man. They're like, hey, here's the zine that we make about North Carolina skateboarding, and like my son was like, we're in the car, and he's like, what is this? Just kind of like is blown away. Like it's just like pictures of kids skating all over like Asheville and stuff, and it was a really cool zine. And I was like, dude, you and your friends could do this, man. He was like, how? And I was like, take pictures and like
Yeah.
write what you think's funny and put it in a book and Xerox
And it's
it.
easier now than ever to do that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
So
Like
and
back.
like he's still every now and then is like, maybe we should start a zine. I'm like, yes, you should start a zine. Like, because like he's like, how he was, it's funny. He's like, how do you get sponsored? I'm like, well, one, you become really good at skateboarding. Two, you just do stuff. You're involved. You like are a supporter. Like you do things in the community, and then people are like, hey, that person's pretty cool. Like, it's like literally, we start a zine. I bet you within a few months you'll have the local skate shop putting an ad in the zine, and like, there's like a few skate companies in Baltimore and stuff. And I'm like, that's kind of how it works, man. Like it's just kind of like you start it, you do it, and then people start like paying attention to you, and like they're like, ah, as long as you're not, an asshole or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which I mean, him and his friends aren't. They're like really funny, like weirdos and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you guys have a cool sense of humor, and people like you guys. I'm sure, like, and you're young, and that's like what matters. Like you're doing your own thing, and you know, but so it was cool just to see him be like, what's this zine? And I'm like, oh man, I got a lot to tell you.
Yeah. So most listeners of Everything Went Black are familiar primarily with your work with Locrian and Holy Circle and various other things musical related, and maybe not so much with the artwork fronts, and more so obscure is your writing too. Like people might not even be aware of like some of the stuff you do with the writing. And so first of all, what's going on with Locrian? Anything going on with these various music projects?
We are in the midst of a pretty epic project. Mainly Andre and I are working on this because it is a multi CD box set of our initial. It's like 5 CDs of material that's coming out on this label Arsenic Solaris, and it's been brutal finding every track that we need to find because they were on limited CDRs and cassettes. And I mean, we did weird loop cassettes and 3-inch CDs. Like, we made like some weird stuff. And I literally this week I've been on the hunt for this one side of a cassette, and I had like a stack of CDRs just with Sharpie, you know, like from
Wow.
radio shows and live sets, and I was just like, well, one, like, you know, most computers don't have CD drives on them anymore. So like it's like, you know, I had to get like an external that I could rip from and go through all these discs, and this like in the process I'm finding stuff we never released. And I found the track this week finally. But so that's been the major thing, is finding that um those tracks, kind of organizing it so people can get through it. So it's like our first concert from like 2005, which was our first CDR release. And That's just been so much um, bandwidth of like finding that, getting that out to everybody. And then we're getting to the label so they can master it this month. Because I mean, a lot of it's like, it was live recordings. Like I literally would stick a mic in a room, and
Yeah.
you know, we would just release that as a CDR, because you know, Locrian really started maybe more in the noise experimental world
Yeah.
than
I remember that.
in the metal world, you know. Like we had these metal elements that maybe made us not so comfortable in the noise world, but we had more noise that made us really uncomfortable in the metal world. So it's like, you know, but like those bands like Wolf Eyes or Black Dice or Lightning Bolt or whatever, like kind of like really fed us like that, you know, two people can make a lot of noise and do stuff. So we're that will be announced a little more officially soon, because there might be some more extra elements to it. But I love CD box sets. I love like collecting material, demos or whatever in there, and always wanted to do one. And I did this other project with this band Toru. I did some cover art for them, and made a friendship with this band from France. They're phenomenal. And From that, they have this really cool label, and I've done some stuff with them with my kind of black metal project Brutalism. And um they were like, they've been wanting to do something with Locrian for a while, and I kind of was like talking to them about this is this thing we've been kind of looking at. And he was like, let's do it, like I'm in. Like, so he started pricing out like box sets and all this stuff. And you know, and we were talking about certain labels like Pika Disc, and uh, just different labels are doing these cool collections, finding all these demos and stuff. So we're doing it, man. It's like almost everything up until Steven joining the band on drums. So it's a lot of these really hard to find CDRs and cassettes. And Yeah, it's happening.
That's
It's a lot of
awesome, dude. And
work.
like that's one of the things that I've always really you know, admired about you guys. And what's interesting is like Locrian, the beginning and where you guys are now is like this whole, journey of like,
Yeah.
and it's cool. Like I love when, as you know, and probably everyone else who knows who's listening right now, I don't like when a band makes the same record in
Yeah.
infinitum, and it's like you can enjoy like such a wide bandwidth of emotions and ideas with Locrian,
No,
and
thank
and
you.
you guys might even make like another pure noise album or something, you know what I mean? It's nothing's off the table with you guys.
Yeah. I mean, we even the last two we did on Profound Lore, it was kind of like we had recorded New Catastrophism as an ambient record, and we brought it to Profound Lore, and he was like, we didn't even he hadn't even said anything, but he was like, I'll do it, but I want to do the next record, and hopefully that'll be more song based. And we're like, that was our idea, was there would be this ambient uh album, and the response would be this really structured kind of, for us, song based record, which was End Terrain. um so you know, it was cool that like he was on the same page, and before we even had to say it, he was like, oh, that'd be great if there's this other component. We're like, it's on the way, you know. Like,
That's awesome.
and it was, I mean, and that was, you know, 7 years of demos and writing, like really, like for End Terrain, like that was a lot of content and stuff for that one. Yeah.
So I see a bunch of artwork behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the stuff looks familiar to me, and you know, we have talked a little bit about your extensive background in with the visual medium and all that.
Yeah.
Now, some of those items I see over your right hand shoulder, those like plastic solids.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, these are they like sculptures or do they
Yeah.
inform some of the?
Let me get one. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like I do like they're like 3D printed. And then I kind of make these vitrines for them, like to hold them like a relic. But they're all based off of like so I 3D print these models I make of like imaginary poisonous or psychoactive plants and flowers, and then kind of like let them mutate in software. I'm surrounded by them, but um, so here's like one that's like this is like in an iridescent case if you can
Yeah.
see it like
Oh, that's cool.
so I had to learn how to do like acrylic welding and um it's like a chemical weld, but not like a real weld. But yeah, and I teach 3D printing. That's like my job. My day job is I teach at community college. I teach like digital fabrication, 3D printing, subtractive manufacturing, CAD modeling, stuff like that. So my art's kind of evolved. My background was in painting, so and then I, probably hmm, uh, um, a long time ago, probably like 17 years ago, I put together my first 3D printer and got a laser cutter, put a bunch of crap in it, set it on fire, like started to learn like how these things actually work. And that became kind of like my, like an area I started to become an expert in. And now for the last like 6 years, have been at this college and, where I train people to how to use a lot of these machines and get certified in 3D modeling software and when you're not I don't know to me it's really interesting and I started thinking about like how can I make art with it so that gets me invested in and it'll be a new technology so like I never had 3D printed with SLA it's like a resin and I'd never done that before until I worked at my community college, and I learned all the ins and outs of that. Now I teach it to my students, and um, we have a lot of other pretty awesome methodologies in our lab, and so I kind of started picking things up and putting it into the paintings, and then into the sculptural side and installations. But then the painting started to be about so the paintings you see behind me. These are like images I'll generate from 3D printing and then I'll kind of blow them up like this giant world, this giant landscape of like machines and they're like oftentimes would be like cells, like cancer cells or like this like liquid or mold growing in the 3D printer, just like this weird kind of science fiction-y landscape. And oftentimes these machines are like really they're relatively small, like some of them. But I'll just start blowing them up so they're like, 5 feet tall or whatever. And like you can kind of turn like there's
Oh,
that one
wow.
over
Okay.
there that's like pretty large.
That's pretty big, man. Definitely.
Yeah. So it's like it's kind of this world building to me, like where it's like I'm thinking of like the sculptures are kind of trapped in these like scientific vitrines, like they're preserved, like so they won't move anymore. And some of them are breaking out of it, and I kind of have a bunch around me. I'm like in the middle of figuring out what I'm doing with them. So I kind of like well, and what I love about it is I can just like print a few and then be like, oh, okay, like, and I'll change it and print a few more, and then eventually it's like, oh, I have this crazy like I have 100 of these things, and like, like, and then it starts to be like a landscape, or it starts to be like an entity, and that's kind of like yeah, to me it's like this like it's visual science fiction to me. Like I'm just kind of like thinking about like making this world that's like somehow out of control or like it's like you know disrupting technology in a way. Yeah.
It's interesting that you use the term entity. Because I've been thinking after completing the reading of New Faith, like this,
Yeah.
your powerful, slim volume that just came out.
Thanks, man.
Okay. I have the hard copy right here, man. It's like a very cool, very austere looking cover on it.
That arrived.
which I'm assuming that you designed that.
No, actually,
No.
Keith Utek from Utek Records is my go-to book designer.
Oh, okay.
And him and I had this long conversation, like where I was like pulling all these like in full disclosure, I went to college for religion. Like
Yeah.
I went to college for religion. And so I have all these books around of like Karl Barth and these theology, like Paul Tillich and stuff like that. And so I just kind of was like scanning in these covers and sending them like I just wanted to look like a religious
Yeah.
book, but not like find faith and hope, but like more like an analysis, like of like a theological analysis. Like I wanted to feel, or like a philosophy book, like Northwestern University has this great like um selection, like in the 70s and 80s they printed this collection of like phenomenology and stuff like of like Edmund Husserl and Merleau-Ponty and stuff like that. And I was like this, like patterns, like it's like very like 70s graphics or whatever. And he kind of came up with this, and I was like, I love it. I was really excited about it when he came up with the design. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was all Keith, man. Keith is a great designer and um did a great job. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely the vibe. And speaking to that analysis, like you lead off with I'm going to mispronounce the word. Something. It's one of those words that you see in print all the time, but I never speak it out loud. But the
Oh yeah.
prolegomena,
Phenomenon. Yeah.
prolegomena. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I never know how to pronounce that word, even though I've seen it in print.
Oh man, I'm guilty of many. I'm like, that's a great word, and I made up a bunch of words too. Like on my like to be fair, but
Well, that's a real word though. That's like
it is. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
yeah, like
yeah,
basically like your mission statement in like
yeah,
like a discourse or a theory paper or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, and a lot of the book was, and I mean, to be honest, it was inspired by. I wrote a book for the Locrian record for End Terrain,
right.
and I hadn't really written for a while, like I was telling you earlier, but I haven't really written for a while, and I was a little bit burnt out, and I'd finished uh, longer works, some novels, and I just wasn't having any success getting them published, and so I kind of took a break and was just like, I don't know what I'm doing, and the guys in Locrian were like, hey, for this, do you want to write something? And I kind of thought about it, and then we were mixing it with Jay Robbins. I had the idea for the first story of Our Dead Age, and then from that, kind of had the next idea. So every day when I was mixing, I would just like, all right, well, he's doing his thing, and I'm just listening to the song over and over again. I'm just kind of like sit there and like let the sounds come up with ideas, and slowly that happened. But that also happened in a way where I was able to generate like a fake, bibliography. And I really thought that was a lot of fun. Like kind of like I could give people like little breadcrumbs of like what inspired me, but I could also like make up books from the future that inspired the text. And it was this fake bibliography that had some kernels of truth, and then the rest of it was like, a book about uh the evaporation of all glaciers, like from 100 years from now, or something like that, where I could like make up this really official sounding text, and then invent universities and timelines and whatever. And that kind of inspired New Faith. Was like, you know like I was like, what if I did this in a different way about religion? And I've been uh reading a few. Roger Zelazny wrote this book
Yeah.
called Word of Light, and it almost doesn't. It's science fiction, but it's like not like it reads like a religious text almost, and that really kind of has always been like a book I've always kind of admired. Um, and then just all kind of came together and was like, well, like make it seem more official, and then fill it with all this fiction. And the front end is like confessions, and the back end is like documents, like
Yeah.
weird collections and stuff. So that play kind of came into effect. Yeah.
The overarching concept in this is really very similar and tied into what we must kind of like almost by accident brought up about creating entities like
Yeah.
within your artwork, and this like
Yeah.
3D printing and all that. And it's like if you think about the creative process where you have this like ephemeral like abstraction that's swimming around in your head and this image, and then that manifests itself somehow into reality, like
Yeah.
I right away when you're showing me those pieces, I was thinking about like the Call of Cthulhu where there's like these like
Yeah.
tiny idols of like
Yeah.
Cthulhu that were you know made,
Yeah.
and it was like a talisman or some sort of relic or whatever.
Yeah.
And religion in so many ways really is similar to just it's part of the creative process of like this like mass consciousness believing in something,
Yeah.
and that gives it power.
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely my thought too, was like, you know, analyzing things in a religious way, like whether it's like a football game or whatever, in the book, or just kind of like what if, there's like a million gods that you find or something, like another story in there was
Yeah,
like you just
that
find
was
all
one of
the
my favorites actually.
where I'm just listing the weird gods that are found underground. Yeah, I mean that was I really like that story too. But you know, and I love lists. Like it's kind of a weird like as a writer, like I just love like listing things and kind of like finding a story in a list. And that was kind of the one where I had written this list and it was really long of all these different gods, like of lint or farts or whatever,
Yeah,
and then like putting the story, structuring it, like dividing it up, and like that eventually like, the gods get discovered and then forgotten, and people worship them ironically, and like they get in a fight or whatever, and like I just kind of thought like, what if there's like so many gods? It's like people are like, okay, too many gods, like
well, I mean that
yeah,
tracks with like any pre-monotheistic religion. If you think about it, it's
yeah,
like people observe the physical world and whatever phenomena, like for example Ra, the Egyptian
yeah,
god who brings the sun across the sky,
yeah.
and then that also tracks a little bit with I don't know if you ever read that novel American Gods, where the belief in certain entities, like for example in ancient Rome, everyone believed, in like, certain this pantheon,
Yeah,
right? But as the Christianity took over, less and less people believed in them,
yeah,
and they just became like these run of the mill, like down and out, like people. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
And
And
then, but I mean, think about like how Christianity is an expression of kind of like its time, like so, and it gets adapted to where like Jesus is like an Apollo type of figure or something, like it's very interesting to me, like if you like dig through the text, like then there's this like Hellenistic response, right? Of like who is you know the kind of philosopher, like a Greek philosopher of what Jesus actually would say, and it's expressed four times, and like, and then and it's like that was kind of for me the beginnings of like when like I went back to a lot of like what I did when I was in college with religion, where I was more interested in that, in the when these texts are being written, there's hundreds of other texts and writings and expressions, and like I just found that fascinating. So that's what I would do a lot with like the second half was like collections of, you know, fictitious gospels or whatever, and because I love like these lists of like works, and then it like expands the world in this way. Um, you know, like the Gospel of Tim or whatever. Like I just was like, yeah, like what if it's just like a normal dude, But so yeah, I mean, I think that it's like that becomes this like overload, and I wanted to also have it be where there's like no gods or whatever, like it's a story about nothing, or a story about a period where like like atheism reigns or something like that, and then you have people being like finding religion or finding religious expression or inventing new religions to like counter, so that to me was like another aspect that like what if you're in an era where there's no gods or something like that, which is kind of how it ends in a way. But you know,
Well, I mean, that's probably tracks more with my own personal view of the world,
yeah,
the universe, because it is incredibly hubristic to think that there's anything special about humanity, in the
sure,
sea of cosmos that we exist in.
yeah,
And that really it's like, you know, all these gods and belief systems can operate more as philosophies as opposed to some sort of like supernatural overlord that,
yeah.
makes the universe work.
I mean, I knew it was like, I mean, it's funny. Like, it's a great conversation when we're in heavy metal. There's a lot of, well, it's funny because it's like, what was it like, Black Sabbath is the most Catholic band out there,
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
or,
Yeah.
or whatever. But then it's like you get to the anti-Christianity or the anti-religious aspect, or like, so to me, it's like I know it's like a controversial topic to write science fiction about, but it's also like, well, it's this creative, weird miasma of like belief. And even, like, even in people who claim the same faith in any faith, it's like if you start drilling down on things, like you'll see that they diverge in these weird areas, and with that, which is just fascinating to me. And, like, and every idea has a history. Like, no idea just like pops up out of nowhere. There's like, it's a reaction or a response to something else, like, and that's kind of, my, like, part of my process was like finding that weird place, where like, like, you would find nuance, between those differences or whatnot.
Yeah, it's really a fast and it's short too. So if anyone out there,
Yeah, it's
doesn't want to like,
yeah,
want to take a chance on this thing,
it's
definitely I urge people to check
60
this out.
pages.
Yeah, man. Anyone could read 60 pages, even if you're like
Yeah,
distracted
yeah,
by TikTok or whatever. You can sit down and knock this out in like a couple hours.
yeah, yeah. I just was like, again, like, I kind of, I don't know. I mean, like, my process is pretty. I'm still developing, to be honest, like frank about writing. And for me, what's been working is like, in some ways, like I had a theme, and I just was like, today is a story. I'm finishing this story. I mean, of course, it would be edited, after that, but it would be like to write Deus Arca or whatever. Like, was just kind of like I had this idea, and I would sit down and pound it out, and not. I knew that it was connected to something bigger, like as a collection, rather than like, oh, it's a short story that's going to just go out in a short story way. I knew that it was part of this constellation of other stories that when you read them all together, it kind of like makes this world. And that, so it was a lot more like where I am in my visual practice or whatever, like where my visual art, like I want to generate a creative world where you're kind of like, you know, um, like of the future where, you know, humanity's almost extinct or something, or, and what's the religion at that time, and it's a self-destructive religion of the
Yeah.
survivors, around a prophet, but like, to me, it was more interesting to create a world and have these unique individual stories that went out, like, oh, and but that you would read it and then read like the confessions, which were like this kind of like sentient technology sending you letters, but you don't know it until you read the end. And it has a footnote throughout it, because I love footnotes. Like, that's like I blame Samuel Delaney for that, but I love kind of like having like another document that tells you why you're reading all the previous documents
Yeah,
that you've
totally.
read, and like Nabokov did that with Pale Fire or whatever. But I just was like, it's more like, because then you're like reading it like, oh, a person wrote this, and you're realizing, oh, like when you read the last thing, it's like, oh, the sentience computer of the spaceship wrote these like love letters and stuff that we've redacted and whatnot. And I thought that made it more scary and interesting.
Actually, you touched on something that I had a question about. Like, because there's all these different elements to the story, did you write an outline, which I know is like a big instrument that a lot of writers do, is to outline the beginning and the ending or with the trajectory of all this stuff? Or did you just sit down and just start rocking and rolling on these like entries?
Oh no, I didn't have like an outline of the whole book, but I would have in my notes app just kind of like I have this idea for this or I have this idea for that or whatever, and just would kind of like keep track. And I knew when I got through all of it, that was the book. Like I knew that like like I'd be working on um Deus Arca, and then I would kind of have the idea for the confessions and be like, well, and the confessions were fun to write because it was like I could kind of do that and mentally get through a lot of things, and like confessions are a really important part of like religious writings, like you know and I was like, well, there should be that, and then just kind of like fragments of prayers or fragments of new holy texts, or like it just was like reading different historical books and then trying to like replicate that for the future. So it wasn't outlined, but it wasn't ordered. It was just very much like I had this idea of like a god that is not moved by violence or whatever, like, and that was like the unmoved mover story, and that kind of just when I got to it just kind of evolved, but I would have these little like stories in my head of just like, all right, there's going to be like the list of gods, and just like, all right, there's going to be a million gods that get found in this dig or whatever. um and then so I'd write that and try not to think about it too much because I was working on something else, and then when it came time to like go through my list, like go through that, and yeah, and then I would eventually kind of exhaust it, and I was like, all right, feels like the story's here, and um it just happens. I don't know. It was, yeah, so it wasn't like a real official outline, and the stories weren't really outlined, but I would like come back to them and pick at them and like move things, add things,
Yeah. Okay.
be inspired by stuff, and like that I was researching and try to put it in there, and but it wasn't really formal or like ABC. It was like in order. It was kind of like writing the stories, and then I would start, like what starts this collection, what ends the collection, what you know. That was kind of the more like once I had all the pieces, I kind of could start arranging it to kind of guide you through this world, um, and get you to what I wanted to tell you, about um, religion, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Roger Zelazny and Samuel Delany as
Yeah.
like, are those two writers that you read a lot of, or?
Yeah, and there's a really great Philip K. Dick story. I might have to look it up. I can see the cover. I just can't remember
Yeah,
the
I mean that dude's got a huge bibliography.
I think it's is it Eye in the Sky? Yeah, Eye in the Sky. Yeah. That's like not a very famous one, but man, that really messed me up a little bit. And I only read it recently, and I really liked it. Like I really thought it was great. And I'm you know Philip K. Dick wrote a lot of books,
Oh yeah,
and they're not all great, but that one is great. Like a great
Eye in the Sky. Okay,
Eye in the Sky. If you haven't
I
read
haven't
it,
read it.
I really
Yeah,
recommend. It's one you'll find like in thrift stores and be like, "What is this?" And it's great. Like it's really really great. It kind of blew me away, and it has all these great religious overtones, and I was like, "Man, he really nailed it." So yeah, there's definitely a few writers and like those that really did inspire me, and there are a few people that wrote. Um, I knew this was going to come up. There's this really cool. Olga Ravin wrote this book called The Employees. I don't know if you've seen it. It's
no,
contemporary, and it's written as it's like they're written as a series of interviews with these people at this corporation, so every chapter is like a different person, and I just loved it as a collection. I love short stories like that, right? It's like
Yeah.
you kind of like come in and go out and like, but I love that it's connected. And that to me was like, again, like it made me feel like what I was doing wasn't like out of like, out of my head or whatever, like that I could make these little stories and kind of build this world around tiny stories, and that were somehow kind of loosely connected, and but then when you step back could feel a little bit bigger. So for me it was like, again, like this thing of scale, like, I mean, it's something I worked with in my visual art, but it was like, I'm going to write this short 2-page story that connects to this other document, but then it starts to feel like this is like in the future, thousands of years from now or something like
Yeah.
that.
No,
And
it's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, like that's fun for me. Like I really enjoy, like kind of like making these things that feel like they're really weird and from a different time, and then or they feel really old, like the story of the hinge, in the book, kind of the last story of the first book of scriptures was like, one where I wanted to feel like almost like it happened in the past, but it's like nuclear, like coated like glass that becomes this giant hinge, and you're reading it as like, it's all this historical stuff that doesn't exist, like this history has happened, but you're reading it like this is from some agrarian post-apocalyptic society, um, and that to me was like really fun to kind of like write like a almost historical story that was, really in the future. And you know but that, I mean, there's definitely like people that have done that and I was inspired by for that, but it was more fun for me to write that way and make the world this like the timeline of the world was longer with that story.
Yeah. Those are always fun. I like universes like world building and things like
Yeah,
that. Like I'm a big fan of that as well.
I mean, it
Have
happens in like Dune too. It's
Oh yeah.
like I forget, I think like it's really cool. Obviously, the movies are really great, but I think my favorite part of Dune is that computers are banned. And it's like that is like my like I always come back to that. I'm like that. It's like, man, he really like he threw in such a that'd be really hard in sci-fi to be like there's no technology, and then to be like, oh, and people are telepathic and telekinetic. And it's just like, well, that's awesome. Like that to me was like I mean, it's still like an inspiration when like you give yourself this like what appears to be like a hindrance, and then you build this world around like I can't rely on computers, I can't rely on technology. That's awesome. Like what a cool idea. I think like happens in Canticle for Leibowitz too, right? You have these like three
Yeah.
books. Yeah, that's a good one. But I think that I often go back to that and like think like Frank Herbert just kind of like, man, like what a weird way to almost kneecap yourself, but generate this total universe, man, of like of potentials. Like a different value system emerges when you do that. I mean, obviously it changes in some other books, but it's pretty cool. Yeah, yeah,
I think I probably have to revisit Dune. Like I read the first Dune novel. I only read the first one, and
yeah.
and that was like I was probably maybe a little too young to hit it. You know what I mean? Like I think I read it when I was like 14 or something
I
like
think
that.
I think the trilogy stands like it's one of my favorites, and I'm very skeptical of trilogies. It's just like such a thing now. Like everybody's like, oh, this is my 3-part novel series. I'm just like, really? I mean, said a guy who wrote a 60-page book, so but I'm always like a little bit like, because by the halfway through the second one, you're always like, ugh, this could have been one book. Like, but Dune is one where it does get weirder. Like it gets really weird in Dune Messiah and stuff like that. Like it gets pretty weird. And I like that how weird it gets. Like it's very strange. And yeah, I don't know. Does everything need to be a trilogy? It's like no. Or like 7-book series. It's like everything in fantasy and sci-fi, you're just like, really, man? Come on.
Yeah.
Like
It's got its pluses and minuses. It's like there's an author that I'm reading right now that the listeners will be familiar with. I talk about this with the episodes I do with Carl Hakera. His name is David Gemmell, and he's like a epic fantasy writer.
Yeah,
And he's written like he created a world. It's got like 11 books in it, but they
yeah,
some of them are connected, but it takes the scope of time. The
yeah,
timeline is so huge, but they make references to things that happened in the past, but each book kind of stands alone.
yeah,
So you don't have to read all 11 books if you don't want to, but you could appreciate the sort of progression of time
yeah,
within. So I like that kind of stuff.
yeah. I mean, I like it too. Like I say it, and I'm like, I was just thinking, like, I'm like a Larry Niven Ringworld fan, and
Yeah.
like Ursula Le Guin and the Earthsea series or whatever. It's like, like, yeah, man, I'm in. But sometimes it's like it doesn't always have to be that way. Like a one and dones are great. We don't need a million prequels. Like it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Like sometimes I don't know. Think about it in films, like with Alien. Like maybe just the first Alien was fine.
I tend to agree with you on that one, man.
Leave us with the questions. Like it's okay. Like
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
mean, that one, I'm going to go one step further and say Hellraiser too really just needed the first movie.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I've tried to go further with those. I'm like, nah. And even the first one, I don't know. Like when you read the book,
The Hellbound Heart
How About
novella.
Heart, you're
Yeah.
just like, man, this was much grimmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually think Hellraiser as a remake closer to the book now would be very interesting because I feel that they couldn't get away with some of the sexual elements
True.
in the movie. But now I think as a reinterpretation, I think it could be more to like, because you watch the movie, you're like, he's like a libertine. He seems so vanilla. Like you're just like,
Yeah, but 1989 or whatever the hell it
yeah,
came
yeah,
out,
yeah. I know, yeah, but it's like if they could remake it now, closer to the book and inspired by the book, and maybe slightly more queer or whatever, it would be like, really interesting. I think, like,
But I'm going to say something now. I think people in 2025, at the end of 2025, are more hung up about sex than people were in 1989,
mm,
ironically. Like, I think that people clutch their pearls tighter now about certain things
yeah,
than they did back in the 80s. Like in the
mm,
80s, 70s and the 80s, I felt like people were pretty wide open about stuff. I think that the problem that you're talking about is that the rating system of
yes,
R
yeah,
ratings.
yeah.
But people were ready for that kind of transgression, though, I think more so back then.
Or if it was like an underground film and not trying to be like a major horror
Right.
film,
Yeah.
I think it could have gone in a different direction. Then I think the story, when you read the story, it's like, you know, it's great. It's a great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, yeah, but I don't know. I went
We
off.
were just talking about like how we don't need sequels, I guess. But my
Yeah.
one challenge though with the first Hellraiser movie though is that the guy who played Frank, Sean Chapman,
Yeah.
you need him. That guy, like that character, like
Yeah.
doing dirtier stuff, maybe. Like if you could somehow go back in time and remake that
Remake it
movie,
dirtier, please.
yeah. But that actor is even though they his voice is an ADR, like it's that's not he's like a British guy with a
Yeah. Yeah.
accent, right?
Yeah.
So that was all overdubbed, like his real
Yeah.
voice. But
Yeah.
like that dude rolls up, he looks like he's from Staten Island, he just looks like this Italian guy, like some dark.
He looked the part. It just, it's one of those ones. I don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with some sequels, but it's sometimes like it's okay.
yeah,
We don't need to know the story before everything happens. It's more fun to fill it in and be like,
yeah.
oh, like, um, I think about that with like with it, for example, right? So there's Welcome to Dairy's on, and I'm like, this was kind of implied in some respects in some of the book, but it's in the book, it's way weirder. Like, and it's like it feels bigger because it's like an aside to a thing that happened a few decades before the events of the novel or whatever. And it's like, the creature has been here for a long time, and it definitely has this Lovecraftian
Yeah, totally.
thing, but like that's what Lovecraft did or whatever, like to make this thing feel ancient, but it's like you're in the contemporary world of the story, but it's this ancient thing, and and you're like, oh, like that happened before mankind, you know. And then that's to me like that scale play is a lot of fun, and I think sometimes it's like we obviously it's because there's a fan base, but it's like sometimes it kind of kills it, like because it's just like I don't need to know all the details. I'm having more fun in my head, like
Yeah.
thinking of what happened, what led up to this point or whatever, you know?
I dig it though. I find Welcome to Derry to be very entertaining though. Like it
Sure.
just
Yeah.
yeah, it's an
Yeah.
entertaining like weekly show which we enjoy watching here
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I like the implication and that's primarily why I like Lovecraft so much anyway, is that it's
Yeah.
like, there's like an economy to his storytelling because a lot of it is told through someone recalling something. You know what I
Yeah. Well,
mean?
I mean, that's like a super 19th century like way of telling those stories, right? It's
Yeah.
like, it's like Frankenstein or yeah, yeah. I mean, it's you know, Poe would do it too, right? Kind
Yep.
of like, I'm telling you what happened, man. Like,
Exactly.
it is really, like, it's a great way of. It's interesting, like, a way of telling the story. I mean, how it's because there's storytelling. Like the character that you meet at this place is bringing you back and filling you in up to that point, and it's um, a cool way of doing it. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So one of the holes in Lovecraft's writing that a lot of people cite is his inability to describe things, I guess, which is turned out to be one of his strengths in implication. It's like
sure.
some people have gone as far as to say that, well, this guy like cops out when he says like it's an undescribable horror or something, or like a color that's never
Yeah.
been seen in this universe.
Oh, that's actually my favorite story is Color Out of Space. I think that's a
Yeah,
great
that's
story.
great, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's like in a way, some people say, "Oh, he's copping out because he can't really describe things." But I don't
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's like, I mean, Lovecraft has some problems.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
But
skirted
like,
around that.
but I think it's like, you know, I think that there's this like vagueness and and again, it's like he's trying to make it like bigger. He's trying to blow it up for you where, and then that's, what makes it like, then your brain, then you're working, you have to like be like, well, what's a color that we can't see? Or, like that's never been here, like that's cool. I think like that makes it really interesting. Like yeah, I don't know if I do that myself, but I know that that's what I'm maybe more attracted to. But yeah.
So, where can people buy New Faith? Like, where's the best place to try to pick this up?
So I put it out on my editions label, Anathemata Editions, and pick it up there. And there's a few bookstores like Atomic Books here in Baltimore has been selling it. They have it online there. Um, and there's another book of mine, Beneath the Remains, is on there that we've talked about in the past.
Hmm.
And my death metal coming of age novella, always really short. I don't know.
That's good though. It's
Short stuff, man. But
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, you can get from Anathemata Editions, and there's some like Locrian stuff there, and a few other bands that I help put stuff out for, and different editions and stuff.
awesome.
Yeah,
Well, thanks for joining us this week, Terrence, and
yeah. Thanks for having me, Mike.
have a great holiday and New Year, and
Yeah, you too.
we'll talk to you soon, man.
Sure.